Hello, everybody. Hello from Lexington, Massachusetts, where I'm sitting in my office here at Agenis. And even though I'm far away from you, my heart and my mind is with you. Our friends at COAF, our citizens of Armenia, our villages, our children, our adults, our older people who are at higher risk, unfortunately, because of this virus. And this whole thing has come about and changed our lives in ways that humanity has never experienced before in recent memory. This virus, known as SARS-CoV-2, is a particle that causes a disease called COVID-19. Now, COVID-19 becomes a problem, becomes a condition, when the virus enters the body through the nose or the throat. It invades the cells of the lining of the nose and the throat. It uses the machinery of the cell to make many more copies of itself. And once that happens, it sheds, meaning it comes out of those cells, it breaks those cells open, and it spreads throughout the body. And the scary thing about this particular virus is that it practically invades and infects every single organ in the body, from the brain to the throat, to the nose, to the lung, the liver, the heart, the stomach, the kidneys, the intestines, the skin, the linings of the eye. And the outcomes could be scary. Could be scary because the medical profession, my doctor friends in the field, tell me that it causes diseases and conditions that they have never seen before. So the question is, since we know that the virus enters through the nose and the throat, what can we do to reduce the chances of infection? These are habits that may be difficult to adapt to immediately, and I'm sure that some of you have already been into the habit of reducing the chances of contracting the infection. But let me repeat them very specifically, because each one of these things is critically important to keep you protected, to keep you safe. The first thing, of course, is to keep our hands clean. Wash them thoroughly with soap and water reasonably frequently. Why? Because we use our hands to touch many things, including a very bad habit of touching our faces. So we need to practice and get into the habit of not touching our faces. According to statistics, the average person touches their face, guess how many times? 2,000 to 3,000 times per day. Per day. So of course I admit that when I tell you not to get into the habit of touching your face, since the average person touches their face 2,000 to 3,000 times a day, it's a very difficult thing, a very difficult habit to get out of. So next, try not to touch surfaces, things in general, unnecessarily. And so that's one of the reasons, by the way, it's very important to wipe surfaces, door handles, and other things clean. For example, I carry this in my office. It's alcohol. And you spray this alcohol on a piece of napkin and then wipe surfaces with it. Simple thing to do, and it protects somebody a great deal. Other things, using masks, for example, and you don't need to necessarily use the N95 mask. of course, health workers that are exposed to people with COVID-19 frequently, they need to use better protection. But the average person can protect themselves using a mask like this. You know, you put it on your face, pull it down, and protect yourself from any casual encounters, if you will. Using of gloves, these cheap plastic gloves can protect you a great deal when you go out shopping and touch things. Of course, we have to touch packages and so on and so forth. Very important to use gloves and then discard them after you finish with your task. Now, there are other things which are difficult because throughout our culture and our habitual things, our charm and our ability to show affection, we have developed habits like shaking hands, hugging people, kissing people, friends and family. Unfortunately, during this time, and perhaps beyond these times, we have to reduce and in some cases eliminate these habits because, again, the virus transfers through handshakes and touchings and kissings and, of course, huggings and so on and so forth. Now, other than that, keeping a safe distance from people. The norm now that is recommended is about 2 meters or 6 feet. And that's probably a safe distance to be away from people so that when they speak and aerosolize their breath, if you will, the chances of transmission is reduced. And this, by the way, protects both you and them. God forbid, for example, if you have the virus, if you're a carrier of the virus, keeping a distance will protect somebody else that may get it. Now, unfortunately, there are so many things about this virus that we do not know. There are a few things about it that we know. So, for example, we know that it infects almost everyone that it comes into contact with. We know that. This is called a high infectivity rate, by the way. Now, some people who get the virus don't get sick. We know that as well. But, very important, they can infect others, even if they don't get sick. Once you have the virus, it may take from several days to several weeks for you to develop symptoms of COVID-19. And common symptoms, well known, are dry cough, fever, and then in some individuals, difficulty to breathe. Now, other less common symptoms include diarrhea, neurological symptoms, for example, loss of memory, skin rashes, blood clots, kidney failure, liver failure, heart failure, confusion, seizures, inflammation of the eyelids, loss of smell and taste. So these things individually and in aggregate are scary because they're things that common viruses don't generally cause. And some of these symptoms can be deadly. Also, what we know about the virus is that in some cases, the infection can cause an overreaction of the immune system, which results in other organs of the body to be attacked by the patient's immune system, which causes organ failure. And this can be, for example, a problem with somebody's heart or kidneys or liver, and it can be very damaging permanently, even if it doesn't kill the person. Unfortunately, currently there are no proven treatments for COVID-19. Now, I cannot tell you how quickly either treatments or vaccines will be developed, but it is best for us to face a reality that may involve living with COVID-19 for some time, hopefully as short as possible, that will be, but we also need to be accepting of the fact that it may be for a long time. It is possible that our world may never be the way it was before. And so the question you may ask is, what does this mean to us? What does it mean for humanity, for Armenia, for COAF, for our organizations, for our companies, and so on? What it means may be that our habits may have to be changed for a long time and possibly permanently. And I'm talking about the habits that I talked about. Of course, not to the extreme. I'm not suggesting that forever we may have to wear masks and gloves. But it may be prudent for us to, for example, change our habits of shaking hands and being in close proximity with people for a long time. Now, we may also adjust to a world where we have to travel less, go on planes less, stay in hotels less, and unfortunately go to restaurants less, avoid crowded places, workplaces, crowded offices, avoid too many shopping centers that are crowded, and even movie houses. In general, avoid being in situations where we have to be very close to people. These may translate to us becoming much more proficient in using remote technologies. Of course, we're in an interesting period because if we were to encounter this virus about 20 years ago, where we didn't have, for example, the technologies to communicate with each other visually the way we do now, our lives would have been a lot more difficult. For example, even though I come into the office every day, I don't have any meetings with outsiders. Our office population is reduced from about 170 people to approximately 45 people. We try to segregate people when they're in the office. We try to rotate people so that not everybody comes in at the same time. Again, all of this for the protection of the individuals and protection of everybody in the team. This may mean being less connected to the world in a physical sense. Of course, we can be connected to the world using remote technologies, but we would be less connected to the world physically. It also means, in some ways, for us to be more independent, more self-sufficient as people, as a world, as countries. And you may ask, of course, with all of these restrictions, is it fun to live this way? And the answer is, of course, it is fun. We can make it fun because it is a new world with new challenges, and it is a change that may be viewed in some ways as a good change, with less running around, less pollution, less doing things, and doing more of things that are more meaningful for us. So my recommendation to all of us is that let's make this work. Let's make it fun. It will mean some level of adjustment, of course, but it is all for your protection, for the protection of your friends and family, your team members, your communities, your country, your citizens, and I think it's worth making some sacrifices that in the long run may turn out to be a very productive way, a very positive way to live, to protect ourselves not just from COVID-19 sickness or SARS-2, if you will, but to protect ourselves from future challenges of pandemics caused by bacteria and viruses. So I'm here. I'm happy to be communicating with you always, and I will address you again very soon. Thank you.